This is Brittany Blackwell, host of the Resilient Teacher Podcast, a proud member of the Education Podcast Network, along with this podcast. Each show on the network is independently owned, and the views expressed may not represent those of other podcasts. For the best education podcast, visit edupodcastnetwork.com.
It's the Education Podcast, your favorite show, with lots of groovy guests and they share what they know. So crank it up to 10 and let your neighbors know that here's another show with Dr. Steve Milletto. Teaching, Learning, Leading K12. Teaching, Learning, Leading K12. Teaching, Learning, Leading K12. With Dr. Steve Milletto.
Kathy Cobb is a Growing Readers Design Team Specialist at North Georgia RESA, which stands for Regional Educational Service Agency, hailing from Ellijay, Georgia. With a rich background in education, Kathy dedicated 22 years to elementary teaching, including 17 years in first grade and 5 years in kindergarten. Her passion for education extended beyond the classroom as she served as a teacher leader, grade level lead, and family engagement coordinator. Transitioning to a role at RESA, Kathy leveraged her expertise in English language arts before joining the Growing Readers team in 2018. Growing Readers, a statewide initiative since 2015, focuses on professional growth informed by cutting-edge research such as Scarborough's Rope, 2001, and the Active View of Reading, 2021. Kathy's role involves providing professional learning and on-site coaching to empower K-5 teachers in enhancing their reading instruction. Before discovering her true calling in education, Kathy explored various paths, including selling advertising for a country music radio station, managing a retail baby store, and working as a flight attendant based in New York City. Now fully immersed in her career, Kathy finds joy in her pursuits outside of work, including learning to play the cello, crafting pottery, and maintaining honeybee colonies. Thanks for joining us on the show, Kathy. Can't wait to talk. Say hi to everyone.
Thank you for having me, and hello to everyone listening.
Well, glad you're here. And before you started teaching, you sold advertisements for a country music station. Now, this is cool. So what was that like?
It was different. There was definitely a learning curve when I started that. It was on commission, so I learned really quickly to listen carefully to clients, get to the root of what they valued and what they needed, so that I could match that with what I had to offer them.
Very cool. So did you ever, meet any country stars?
I met more music stars as a flight attendant than I did working in the radio industry. I just mostly was talking to clients who needed advertising.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. So you taught for 22 years with elementary school kids. What is something that you like most about working with kindergarten and first grade students?
Well, I think my favorite thing about kindergarten and first grade is just that everything is still so magical to them. They're so curious about the world and want to learn everything. They can learn about anything that comes their way. All
right. So, and I totally understand. I mean, working with young kids. Now, I myself preferred high school, right? Especially 10th graders. They were awesome. But as a former soccer coach or soccer cheerleader, whatever you want to call it, at the early ages, working with kindergartners and first graders and second graders and third graders, it was cool as you went through, as they progressed, and you saw the difference between. Because I got to ask you what it's like when. Because one of the things I ran into with kindergartners is some of them are still in the very concrete thought process.
Very, yes. So they don't get jokes and riddles yet. Everything is very much concrete. But I think kindergartners and first graders are often underestimated. They're really deep thinkers and know a lot about the world. And it's our job as teachers to move them into a more academic world with that while not squelching their joy.
That's cool. One of the things I really remember is one kid who, once he got the ball, he wouldn't give it back. It's like
it's mine now.
It's mine now, and he just, it's like. Anyway, that's cool stuff. I mean, what a cool thing though to experience when you're working with kids, as you see that those change in the way they see the world, and they start making those adjustments. Because I know I saw it on the soccer fields where you'd see kids go from mine to. Right. Sharing. Now I understand. That's a good thing in this sport.
Maybe I can get more done with other people.
Yeah, exactly.
Than by myself. Mm-hmm.
you ever experience that in a way in the classroom? Like you see the kid, this mind to, all right, you can borrow that or whatever.
I think it varied with the kids. Some were more willing than others, but I think in a learning situation, when they would give each other feedback or talk about things that they had read or a science experiment, a way to do math, anything like that, when they would work with their friends and see the way they were doing it and they could adjust what they were doing, which is an interesting shift from my way's the only way to maybe there's another way and it can be right also.
Nice. All right. So what's something that you learned from teaching that as an educator you want to always remember?
Well, I think it's important to really try to understand children, understand people as a whole, and know that with a few exceptions, people are doing the best they can, and to take them where they are and try to move them along.
Very cool. It's, one of the things that I'll always remember is that there was never a day that was exactly the same as the day before. Any thoughts about that?
I think that's a great thing. It's a little, I don't think I would thrive in an environment where it was the same exact thing every day. You do have to be adaptive and flexible and kind of go with the flow, but kept it interesting.
I understand, most definitely. All right, so if you had a chance to go back in time and talk to you before your first day as a teacher, what advice would you give you?
Just relax, calm down.
Nice.
You have time, but also keep the urgency in teaching. Don't let a relaxed attitude make you slack in what you're doing. Like, you have to keep that making the most out of every minute that you have with your students, but you don't have to rush and you don't have to be panicked about it.
Nice. That's great advice, because I think sometimes everything is like, you got to get it done, got to do this, got to do that. And the kids pick up on that anxiety.
Exactly. They do. And we do it to ourselves. We do it to our families. And we do it to our children in school. And it's just not the best environment to learn.
You got that right. All right, so let's shift gears to you after teaching. Mm-hmm. You became a team member of a RESA in Georgia, mm-hmm. and at that RESA, you became part of Growing Readers. Share briefly what a RESA is, and let's talk about what the Growing Readers' purpose is.
Okay. Well, like you said, RESA is Regional Educational Service Agency, so that is what we do. We work with local school systems, with colleges, libraries in our district, and make sure that they can meet their educational needs and give them any support, and we tailor it to what they need. And we have that just across the spectrum, anything you could need in one of those environments. Okay, so my role in this RESA is with Growing Readers, and our purpose is to support kindergarten through fifth grade readers or teachers to fulfill the requirement of the Georgia Early Literacy Law. So our aim is to move from theory into practice. So we work really hard with teachers to build their knowledge about reading, their skills with students, and also their confidence. We take a lot of that away by giving teachers programs to follow that are scripted, and there's a place for that. But what we do is support them with whatever program the school is using and really work to develop the teachers. So we're not a program, we're a project that really helps teachers understand everything there is to understand about teaching reading and help them transfer that to work with their students. So we work, we have off-site professional learning 2 days, twice a year, but we follow that up with the real magic in it is the on-site support. So we go into the schools, we go into the teachers' classrooms working with their children and coach them. So we're not saying, here's your professional learning, go back and do it, and I'm going to come and check on you. Rather, we say, here's your professional learning. We're going to come and help you get started. We're going to see where you are, where your students are, and coach all of you to the next level.
That's excellent. That's awesome. So with that, things I want to make sure that we talk about here is, what do you think are some of the greatest challenges, that kids face in developing, strong reading skills?
That is a very, very complex question.
So for example, one of the things that I think about is that, as a kid, even though eventually my parents get divorced and stuff like this, they always encourage reading. I mean, my sister and I are always given books by them, our parents, even after their divorce. We had family members and friends of the family that you pretty much counted on. You would get books for presents and stuff like this, and it was a cool thing. And my parents read, and they talked with us at the dinner table, or they when we were real young, sung to us in the bathtub or had conversations with us and stuff like that. It's all this type of stuff happened, and I know I've read a lot about some of the things that help with reading. Obviously some of our children have some challenging situations with
they do.
Situations they're in. So.
And I know that you recognize how lucky you are as a child to have parents that did that.
Most definitely.
For you. And we know that some do, but not all do. And providing them with books they want to read, books they can read, giving them time to do that in school is so important, because they may not have that opportunity at home. So we know that reading is very complex. They have to be able to decode the words, and then they have to be able to, recognize those words as something that has meaning, and then build into comprehension. So the simple view of reading, and we talked about some reading models earlier, began our understanding. We know it takes word recognition and language comprehension to become readers. And then Scarborough developed it later in the reading rope model, which elaborated on the simple view. And then Duke and Cartwright have the active view of reading now that came out in 2021, and added the self-management that's required. So a lot of executive functioning skills, a management system for kids to help them learn to read, to put all of those things, all of that word recognition, all the language comprehension, to put that together and use it. So many things involved in that, and we could talk about that all day long. But one of the very important things is teaching them, but giving them the opportunity at school to apply it. So they need to be reading, they need to be writing, and using what you've taught them, instead of just teaching it and hoping for the best.
That's cool. It's when you think about just the different stages, 'cause like you said, I do see that I was very fortunate that had family members, parents that encouraged reading, and it's and that was just a big part of our world. And and back in those days too, you had newspapers around the house, right, and things like that, as well as magazines, and I was big into comic books. I was I know today they call them graphic novels, but but the point is that we do have children that have some challenging situations centered around that, and where that encouragement for reading comes from. What do you think is something that a classroom teacher needs to learn about reading to help kids become readers if they've discovered they have some that may not want anything to do with it?
I think you have to understand that just opening a teacher's manual and going through the motions isn't going to get done what you think it will get done. There's a place for them. They have a lot of great information in them, but if you don't really understand the components of it and what those activities in your teacher's manual are teaching you, then you may be teaching every day one part of reading, but leaving out something important. And unless you really understand what's in that manual, then you at a deficit and you leave your children at a deficit. So can I go back to when we were talking about children and what they need? We can't assume that they have time to read at home or that they have materials to read at home. So we have to be sure we offer that opportunity.
Very cool. It's no, it is important. I mean, it's, especially I think sometimes as a classroom teacher that it's important. I don't care what grade level you are, that you find out whether they're following you or not. Do they understand what you're saying? Do they understand the words you're using? Because some kids are really good at faking you out,
So good. So good. And unless you work with them individually, you don't know. I clearly remember the first time in a classroom that I thought all my kids were getting it, and then I had them over in a small group and I just noticed one little boy that I thought he really had this, and he was faking me out.
Nice.
And that's when I learned I don't really know my students as readers. And if you don't know them as readers, how can you teach them?
So profound right there. Yes, very much so. All right, we're going to shift gears a little bit here. Because something that I also mentioned in your bio is that you have become a beekeeper. So now this is really, really cool. And talk about how this happened and what you like about it.
It was a pandemic hobby. So interestingly, a lady who mentored me at school happens to be my neighbor and a beekeeper. And so she mentors me now with beekeeping. So it's just a hobby that we decided we were going to get started with. My husband and I really don't even remember why we started it. It just seemed like a good idea. We had plenty of time to do it. And so we started. We started small and have built, we started with one hive from our mentor, and that day found a swarm of bees and built that into a hive too. So we really started with 2 hives on the same day, and we're up to 10 now. So keeps us busy in the summertime, especially. And I guess what I like most about it is just seeing the intricacy of something that seems small, but how beautifully it all works, really without us having anything to do with it. But since we have so many hives in close proximity, they don't have the same resources they would if they were feral hives. So they won't build a hive too close to another one. They'll make sure they have plenty of room in between, and we've got them all right together. So, and I guess this really applies to teaching as well. But with bees, our main job is to give them what they need and take away what they don't need or what's harmful to them. So the same in schools. I think a lot of times with teachers, we give them more and more and more to do, but we never take away the less effective practices. And that's something we could give to teachers as well as bees.
Very cool. And I wasn't even expecting you to tie it into teaching. Nice. One of the things I got to ask you this, because what's really cool in working with bees, I mean, because you guys just took it up. You just decided,
right.
It's not like you came from a family of beekeepers, right, or belonged to Beekeepers R Us or something like this, and so what's something really neat you learned about bees that has come out of this that you and your husband have figured out?
There's so many things. I think it's interesting that it takes all of the bees. A lot of people think the queen is the boss of a hive, and she has a very specific job and in a way is the boss, but also all the other bees are her boss too. So it takes all of them working together, and they're very specific about what their jobs are, and they age into different jobs as they grow, but they have a very specific job to do, and it makes the whole colony work together. Very cool.
Now, one of the things you do is that you also make honey.
They make honey.
Or they make honey. Yeah, thanks. Nice. Yes, they make the honey, but you bottle it.
Right.
There we go. So, I mean, that's a cool aspect of it. I mean, as you started, I mean, obviously you had to figure out how to gather the honey from the bees. I mean, how do you go about How'd you figure that one out?
It really is a fascinating process. So, of course, our mentor helped us with that. But bees will gather their nectar and store it, and they know when it's between 12 and 15% humidity, and then they'll cap it with wax. So when the whole frame is capped with wax, you know it's ready to take. And you take their extra, so we leave plenty of honey for them in the hive for them to make it through winter. But we can take the extra, and then you have to take the wax cappings off, and then we have an extractor. So we put that in. It's really just a centrifugal force. You just crank it, and ours is a hand crank, and pulls the honey right out, and then you can reuse the comb.
Very cool. Very cool. They and you also have that really cool outfit you get to wear now too, right?
Right. It's a fashion statement for sure.
Nice. So do you have any visions of like, you got 10 hives now, you're going to have 25 in a few years? What do you...
My husband would love that. He would love to have a field full, and that's fine with me. It just really becomes a full-time job more than a hobby if you get a lot. But we are working to be more efficient when we get into them, and just, at first when we got them, we spent a lot of time in the hives because we were just so intrigued by everything going on. Like as a kid, I had read about the waggle dance, but then seeing it, I was like so amazed that it actually happens.
That's cool.
Yeah, to watch that. So it's just a matter of not spending so much time watching them and enjoying that, but just really being more efficient with it. You don't want to disturb them too much. So
nice, like that. All right, so let's shift gears. We're getting ready to finish up, and I got a last two questions I'd like to ask you. The first one goes like this: how do you keep going when so much is going on that you may want to quit?
Well, I think I refocus and try to remember what the main thing is and keep the main thing, and kind of compartmentalize that, knowing that there are still other things I have to get done, but what really is the most important thing I need to do, and stay focused on that. Another thing is to have some hobbies, to kind of give yourself just a mental break, bring some joy, and something like learning to play the cello. That the only thing I can think about when I'm doing that is learning to play the cello. Nice. I can block some of the other mental clutter out.
Very cool. Last question. Do you have a teacher in your past who made a difference in your life? If so, who was it? And what would you say if given the chance to say thank you?
I've thought about that question. I've heard you ask other guests on your podcast, and I really have spent some time thinking about it, and I can't pin it down to one that really made the biggest impact. I think it's really a composite view of all the teachers that I've had that have impacted me. So I think to all of them, I would just say thank you. Thank you for letting me explore things I wanted to and be myself while I learned under them.
Very cool. Appreciate it. Kathy, thanks so much for talking with us about teaching, growing readers, beekeeping. Love it. Wishing you the best in all you do.
Thank you. You too.
Hey, you have been listening to Teaching Learning Leading K12, a podcast to help you help kids achieve their dreams. Teaching Learning Leading K12 is a member of the Education Podcast Network. Podcasts for educators, podcasts by educators. Teaching Learning Leading K12 is a member of the podcast network based in Canada called Voice Ed Radio. Voice Ed Radio, your voice is right here. The opinions expressed on Teaching Learning Leading K12 are those of the guests and host. Teaching Learning Leading K12 is intended to share ideas, advice, and suggestions. Teaching Learning Leading K12 is produced for educational purposes. Hey, thanks for listening. It would be awesome if you visited my website at stephenmiletto.com and connected with me, left a review, and listened to more episodes. And by the way, you could also share it with your friends, with your family, and your colleagues. Thanks so much. You're awesome.